Welcome to the IT Matters podcast, hosted by Opcala. We're an IT advisory firm that makes technology easy for your business. Our vendor-neutral technology advisors work directly with your team to assess technology needs and procure the best IT solutions for your organization. On this podcast, expect high-level expertise from our hosts, plus experience-driven perspective from the leading experts on topics like AI, cybersecurity, industry-focused IT solutions, strategy, and more. Now, let's get into today's discussion on what matters in IT.
Welcome to the IT Matters podcast, hosted by Opcala. At Opcala, we help IT teams understand the busy marketplace of technology, strategy, and services with a data-driven approach. On this podcast, we invite technology leaders to discuss challenges facing the modern IT department. And my name is Keith Hawkey, technology advisor with Opcala, and I'm joined by my colleague and esteemed technology advisor, Michael Coloma. During this episode, we sit down with John Sotelo, the CIO of Cloys Gear and Products, whose career defies convention. Starting in sales and rising into IT leadership, we'll explore the pivotal moments and decisions and mindset shifts that help bridge the gap between business outcomes and technology execution. And we'll also unpack the future of IT infrastructure and operations, including how AI and data are poised to transform the automotive industry. He shares his bold vision for innovation along with some personal projects like a VIN-based initiative that could reshape how we understand vehicle data. John Sotelo, welcome to the IT Matters podcast.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Love to have you.
But before we begin, I'd like to play a little game. We're going to play a game of two truths and a lie, IT focused. And Michael, you can play too. So I'll say these three things that have happened in IT recently, and you guys can try to guess which one is the lie. Are we ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
All right. So at CES 2025, a Japanese company unveiled a robotic cat named Nikojita Fufu, designed to cool down hot beverages by blowing air in human-like intervals. So that is option number one. Number two, researchers developed an AI interface that assists with individuals with speech disabilities in delivering timely jokes during conversations, enhancing their social interactions. Number three, a startup introduced a smart toaster that analyzes facial expressions each morning to determine your mood and adjust the toast's crispiness level accordingly.
Those are unique.
Yeah, thank you.
Clearly, I should have gone to CES this year.
John, give me your thoughts first, and then I'll make my give us your guess first, and then I'll make my guess.
I'm a little hard on the cat thing. I'm going to go false on the cat thing, but again, could be totally wrong because the way we're taking technology and AI is defying some things that even I didn't think would happen. I'm going to go truth on the AI speech disability because I think that would be a really good tool for people that kind of have struggles in that arena, and also not just speech impediments, but also social anxiety with talking with folks and breaking the ice. And I can totally see a smart toaster in terms of how do I predict your mood? Do I give you another cup of coffee? Do you do the cold brew today because it looks like you need one? So I'm going to go 1 false, 2 true, 3 true.
Okay.
For 500.
Yeah.
For 500. There we go. I got you down for 500, John. What about you, Michael?
I'm going to go the other way here. I'm going to say that the cat beverage cooling item is true. I'm going to say that the tool to help people with speech impediments and the ability to help them communicate is true as well. But I'm going to say that the majority of people may shift their breakfast tendencies. So I think the demand for a toaster might be a little less. So I think if we're catering to more of the masses, as cool as a cat beverage cooler would be, I think there's less people in demand for a toaster. So that is my guess. I think first two are true and the third one is the lie.
All right. And Michael, you were right.
Oh, man.
I had no insider knowledge, by the way. I want to make that very clear.
That's right. That's right.
I cry foul.
The Nikojita Fufu robotic cat was indeed showcased at CES 2025, aiming to cool hot drinks by mimicking human blowing patterns. And an AI tool was developed to assist individuals with speech disabilities and with timely jokes, enhancing their ability to engage in humorous conversations. However, there's no mood detecting toaster. No such device has been introduced that I know of, at least.
It's coming, and I'd like to figure out how it could be a part of that data transition.
It's coming. How you can monetize.
With some levity here, let's get started. John, can you tell us a little bit about your role as CIO of Cloys, and what do you guys do at Cloys? What's the high level here?
Sure. So CIO, fancy title for making sure that technology complements the business and keeps us driving. So that includes the not so fun stuff like making sure our distributions stay up from an internet perspective, making sure that Microsoft 365 works, and everyone's favorite fun tool, which is ERP, up and running. But also we get to dabble in some of the things that help drive business, right? So connecting transactions from our customers into our internal systems, managing some of the data lakes and some of the dashboards that we really put some effort into over the last year, and providing insights to our internal teams to help drive business decisions. But more importantly, I think we've kind of become a little bit of the glue that binds when things come in from a technology perspective. For example, our operations team is looking at a transportation management system. We're kind of that gap between, hey, operationally, here's how it works. Technically, here's how we integrate it. And similar story to things like, hey, the scan guns aren't working. What can we do to go look at them? And, some of those things are easy fixes, and some of them turn out to be that break fix that you should have found out about 2 years ago, if you will. Also on the forefront of some of our acquisitions and integrations that we've done over the last couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. Michael, I think this is the first time that you've joined the IT Matters podcast. Am I right?
That is correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Apkalla? What do you do?
Yeah, so very similar to your role. I work with our customers to obviously help their team procure solutions that are going to optimize, make their organizations way more efficient, help keep them on the forefront of an ever-changing world when it comes to IT, and helping them transition from this mindset of IT always being a cost center to how do we integrate and find solutions that will help drive revenue, make the business more efficient, and really improve the overall health of the organization from a infrastructure standpoint, a security standpoint, and making all their employees' lives a lot better. So I know it's a fancy way of saying that these are all solutions that I think will help drive business in the right direction for a lot of our customers. And so the unique thing for me in my role is I get to work alongside people like John. John is who I met through a family friend. And again, the way that our paths have aligned has obviously been really unique. And I would say it's been such a refreshing pleasure to work with somebody who has taken a new approach to a traditional CIO role. And I'll let John kind of highlight a little bit more of that. But, John, I'd love to hear more of your background and how you ended up in this leadership role and talk about your career path as it's advanced to where it is today.
I've met IT leaders that used to be commercial fishermen. I've met IT leaders that came from all walks of life, all parts of the world. I have never met an IT leader that came from sales. So that is a first. I can't wait to hear about that story. Tell us a little bit about how you moved from sales over to IT, and who did you have to woo?
Very carefully, and it's a long story. Thank you for the kind words, Michael. I appreciate it. To step on something and go back to I missed, Cloys, think of Cloys as critical parts to an engine, so timing chains, gears, and parts. We also acquired a company called Rotomaster out of Canada that supplies turbos. And if you're following the auto industry right now, a lot of V6s are moving more to the turbo side of the house. And then we also acquired a company out of Denton that allows for timing tensioners and other front of engine parts is the best way to put it. So we're in that critical path to what's in the mechanical side of the space. And with vehicles in operation getting older, obviously we become a little bit more critical to what's going on with the car. My world, my journey, my destiny, however you want to put it, has been an interesting one. I actually started off in sort of sales cashier land at Toys R Us in 1997 and sold video games in what was called R-Zone at that time, and decided, hey, let's go to college. And I lasted for like a semester and decided this is not going to work for me. And I spent about a year remodeling Toys R Us's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and decided, hey, maybe I should go back to school, right? Let's go try this again. And spent my college career basically issuing parts at an aviation company on Love Field, working second and third shift. Arguably one of the coolest jobs I ever had because I got to saw what they call VIP aircraft, which if you haven't seen is one of the coolest things ever. And I had a friend through my wife that said, hey, you should come work the help desk or the knock at a credit card processor. And I think I pushed back for 4 or 5 months. And mind you, I was commuting 110 miles a day between college, home, and work. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. So I finally relented and took on arguably one of the toughest interviews I've ever had, even as a professional, with a group of people at Heartland Payment Systems at the time. I didn't know that company would go on to IPO in 2007 and become a Fortune 1000 company that I got to take the ride on. And it was absolutely incredible. During that time, I met some group at a big 3-letter reseller, which you guys could probably figure out if you go on LinkedIn. And a couple of the leadership from Austin came in and said, why don't you try sales? I go, why don't I try sales? Let's go try this. My daughter was recently born and I really wanted to spend some time at home. And quite honestly, I got a little tired of supporting email because I ran the corporate IT group in the help desk. And I took a chance on it because I was young enough, I think, to make a mistake and open enough to go learn something new, because I think that's something we have to go do. And what are you going to lose? I mean, it wasn't a salary hit. It wasn't anything but more of an experience thing. And a big thank you to the management team at that company that took a chance on me, because I didn't make it very long, to be honest with you. I built a pretty healthy pipeline, made some really, really good sales during the time frame, but I wasn't ready for it. I learned a ton. And then for those of you guys that have worked with me before, and for Michael, for you, I'll speak to you just like if I were in sales, like forecasts and pipelines, because those things are important. You know, you don't want to hear about solid state drives, memory, RAM. Those things are, by the way, they want to know about profitability, forecasting, margin, and things like that. So I learned all of those things, thankfully, from that, and sort of re-architected the way I thought about coming back into IT as I went back from, sales to customer. And to your point, Keith, that's a stretch. Because, if you're a hiring person on the corporate IT side, looking at someone that's coming from sales, like, what do you know about IT? Well, similar if you're going from IT to what do you know about sales? And so bridging that gap between, call it the technical side of the house, and we'll just refer to the non-technical side of the house, accounting, finance, et cetera, is kind of where I've tried to play more and not be as technical with people anymore. And be more solution selling internally, much like you guys have to do to customers like me. And I honestly started working in private equity IT, starting with back to an insurance company. I ended up in a group that had 4+ portfolio companies, anywhere from Hawaii all the way up to the Northeast in New York, and got to travel a lot. And my American Airlines miles thanks me. My wife, however, not so much, as we went through that 18-month period. But got to see a ton of different experience in a ton of different industries, and found my way into automotive IT, following a former CFO and CIO. And we built a really, really cool platform that's still in use today for vehicle diagnostics. I've hung out in auto since 2018, and I was working at a big bank and consumer lending company for auto in 24, sorry. I got this call from a recruiter. And she was like, hey, I don't have anything open right now, but wanted to get to know you. So you never know who you reach out to. So if I give anyone any advice, you don't know who you're going to end up talking to, who's going to touch you later on in life. That call in the end of October of 23 came a month later for that same person saying, I think I found the perfect job for you. And it's the job I have today. And it's all because I just took a random call from her and just talked, and just like a normal person, right? And I went through 4 or 5 weeks of interviews and ended up accepting the role for Cloise as a CIO. And for me, it was I hate to say cheesy, but it was a dream for me, because my goal was to hit CIO by the time I was 40. And when I got this job, my daughter's like, oh my gosh, Dad, you made it. My wife too. And I'm like, yeah, but I was 3 years late. Neither here nor there. But that's, to be long-winded, that's the short and the run of it. It's a long story if anybody wants to know more.
I'm curious, what were some of the solutions that you were selling back at that 3-letter reseller?
Great question.
What was in vogue at the time?
So this was, you had a lot of VMware. You still had a lot of on-premise data center stuff going on. I think one of the coolest projects I got to be a part of was a healthcare company, and got to know the person that continues to lead that company that day. And we did a full-blown solution for them for a private internal cloud, complete with a colo. We helped them spec out a co-location here in Plano. So soup to nuts, space, floor, power, and they even helped with some of the staffing and consulting as well. So it was a really, really cool project to be a part of. So it was a Cisco solution at the time, UCS with EMC in the background. Anything you could talk technically, right? I mean, that was a cool thing. We had 9 reps at the time in the office, and I'd been working with a lot of these folks for years because they were at other companies that I'd done business with. And so it was like working a little bit with your family. And so I held the record for the most visits in a given week with customers. And I think it was like 18, just because I got drug along to all the meetings, which I'm very thankful for, because that experience is something you just can't live again.
Kudos to that. That's amazing, John. I'm curious. So you've done a lot of work, particularly in the cybersecurity area with Cloys in your career. Cybersecurity has always been an important topic, but in your tenure, what are some of the things that IT leaders typically overlook when it comes to assessing risk and attaching value to cybersecurity investments and just the overall posture? Like, what do you interchange with CIOs and CISOs that are having to develop these plans for the company? What are some of the things that you find that are easily overlooked?
Sure. Believe it or not, sometimes it's little things. Sometimes it's not going through and looking at an account that hasn't been activated. Sometimes it's not double checking who your admins are on, system A, system B, pick your one that aligns to your organization. And in other cases, it's not taking a hard look at what your risks are as an organization. And it's not just, do I have the appropriate next generation firewall in front of our systems? Are we in the right public cloud? It's not things like that. It's like, what is your business continuity plan? What happens when the lights go out? What happens if we get hit with the inevitable ransomware attack? Those are things that you can prepare for. And so that when you do hit the heat of the moment, you can react accordingly to maintain the continuity of your organization. But also, no one wants to be on the news right now, especially in cyber. And no one wants to end up on some, dark web portal where your information is getting pushed out there. So really, it's not necessarily looking at it technically. Sometimes it's looking about it. How do we make sure that we continue to make money as an organization, and aligning not only your solution, but your mindset with it too? Because in some cases, some of the things we do don't really cost anything. In a previous life, we used the term use what you have. And when you have a lot of the technologies that Microsoft gives you, or even if you subscribe to the things that a Meraki or a Palo gets you, sometimes we don't use that, even 80% of that solution. So before we go back to our internal executive teams and finance teams and ask, hey, we need a product X, we really need to make sure we're consuming as much of the existing baseline that we already have. The last thing anyone wants to do is to go buy a product, half deploy it, and then it becomes the entryway for an issue, whether that's a continuity issue or cyber event.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, John. And so I'm glad you brought this up, right? Because one of the things that we hear a lot from our customers is when evaluating a cybersecurity solution, a lot of times what comes up is sometimes the mentality of if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Or, hey, I'm not too worried about this area within our business, right? Because we haven't had any issues here. Or, hey, we just haven't really run into this instance that would provoke us to look at a solution or a tool that would shore up our security measures. So what are some of the things that you look at for Cloys when you look at how do you stay on the forefront, or I guess at the forefront of the cybersecurity space, right? Like, how do you predict, well, hey, this is something we should look at if it's not currently an issue? How do you be more proactive versus reactive when it comes to the cybersecurity space?
Great question. You do the best you can, honestly. Regardless of how much you try and stay ahead of it, you're always going to be a little bit behind, and no one likes to hear that. It's moving too fast for you to be 100% secure, right? The industry will give you good news. There are good things that you subscribe to. LinkedIn is a powerful tool, not just for, connecting, networking, finding your next job, if that's your thing. I see a lot of good information that gets shared out there from the cyberspace. There's a morning newsletter that comes out every day. There's websites like Dark Web, Bleeping Computer, things like that. That'll give you good insight. Now, that insight sometimes is what the pain of somebody else already feeling, right? Someone's already bid it, so now you're out there. We've used those tools to mitigate issues proactively for our side of the house. I hate to say one person's issue becomes our positive change. We work with a group and subscribe to a group called Automotive Information Sharing. And so we get a daily report out that says, here's what's going on in the automotive industry. We have a really good partner that we work with in our MSP land right now that we get good insight from them and what's going on in the market. And, how do we protect our tools? How do we protect our base? And I'll tell you, one of the greatest things that I think we have going for us right now is security in our world's a top-down thing. It's not just me preaching it. Our CEO preaches it too. It is something we talk about every town hall. We have something that goes up in every town hall about why it's important to watch what you click on, and why we do what we do to protect the organization, because that's what matters most. So I think one of the other things that we do proactively is we talk to our employees about security. We have security as a mandate for training, and we grade you on it, and we make sure that we're watching it. So we have a group in IT that is assigned different organizations in our company in different locations that watches how many points you get on scores, so that we can keep track of how are you doing from a cyber posture perspective. But all of those things are proactively helping prevent what could happen. The tools are great, but we've got to start also making sure that we're minding our employees as well.
John, what are some of the unique cybersecurity challenges that are facing the automotive industry?
Oh, man. It depends on where you want to start. If you want to start at the car, you've got the connected car and everything associated with it. You got the old school OBD2 port. They've done a lot of work on what is the secure access gateway and things like that. You've got a lot of aftermarket tools and things like that that give you access to a car where you can reprogram it. There's been a ton of advance in terms of, at the car technology and cybersecurity that can be done. But when you start getting into service providers and things like that, we have information, right? We have data on cars, you have data, on consumers, whatever. So data becomes the real big one right now. And I don't know if you follow some of this stuff, but there's been some big OEMs say, well, the data's ours, you're on the road. Well, data is the new gold, and it's consumer information. It could be location information. I think as we continue to see the next decade, as the connected car evolves, as infotainments evolve, I mean, if you look at, I have a 2019 truck, right? And my infotainment is about a 6x6 screen that I hardly pay attention to because it's old. It doesn't look that cool. You get into something right now like a 25 GMC and it's like you're in your, home entertainment system. All of those things connect back to something, whether that's in the car, outside the car, and they coexist in the background along with the same things that drive critical components like your ADAS, which helps drive safety, your CAN modules, which drive some of your braking systems. I jokingly said this on a call recently. It's like a rolling data center right now with a vehicle. And in terms of not only what happens with compute and storage for everyone's fun thing with on-premise data centers, but also what happens with the data and the cyber side.
Data is king. I know that our vehicles are they're gathering all kinds of data on the drivers. And I don't know how much Cloys is involved in this. It's probably more of a manufacturer, but I always wonder where that data is going.
We fortunately are not on that component. We're more on the mechanical repair side, right? In terms of what we do. If you look at where these things are, it's your sensors, right? So if you look on the front of a bumper, it's a little circle dot that helps drive how far you can get to a car. Or if you're in assisted cruise control, how far does it start? A lot of it's going to go to your OEMs. A lot of it's going to go to OnStarts, going back to GM, stuff like that. Mileage may vary. And I think it's one of the things as we get through, 2025, 2030, and we start talking about personal information, CCPA, and all these different privacy acts, I think we're going to start to see hopefully some legislation around how that looks and how we handle it, how we manage it. There's tons of good information that you can glean off this stuff, right? And I think you mentioned one of my personal pet projects I want to do is around bins, but there's a ton of proactive information that you can use with the data that comes off this car. But as everyone knows, there's always going to be a person, an entity, whatever, that doesn't want to use it for the greater good, but instead wants to use it to do something nefarious or whatever you want to call it.
You said something that talked about the future of the auto industry, and it just really kind of made me want to throw this question at you. Is you've heard all the emphasis, and whether it's through the manufacturers themselves or government legislation about electric vehicles and the future of what that looks like. So one of the things you just mentioned was all this data that's being consumed, right? So where do you think Cloys fits into this in the next 5, 10, 15 years as it relates to the automotive industry, specifically around the electric vehicle standpoint? Because what you shared earlier about Cloys and how they work on a lot of these traditional fossil fuel burning engines, right? What does that look like for Cloys? And it's just something you brought up that I wanted to ask about, because GMC has, for example, put an emphasis that by 2035 or whatever, they're going to have the majority of their vehicle offerings are all going to be electric, right? So I just wanted to get your perspective on that, since you mentioned the data standpoint, what the future of the automotive industry looks like.
Absolutely. So for Cloys, more to come on that one. I think that's something that's actively underway in terms of how the organization handles some of those different parts in the evolution that, I think the most important thing to look at is when you look at ICE or internal combustible engines, they've got a long way to go. We can flip the switch and say, hey, EV mandate in 2030, state A. That's great, but we're still selling ICE up until that point. And the runway, I think, for an evolution for what's coming, you're going to see still a combination of reducing your traditional V8 motors down to your V6 with a turbo, which is good for us, right, in terms of turbo. But full EV, there's still components that kind of are complementary to what we do in the background. But I'm really anxious to see what happens with hybrid. If you guys look back to what, Toyota took on a lot of heat years ago because they wouldn't put a full-blown EV strategy out. They postured a little bit and said, hey, let's see what happens. And their gamble paid off because hybrid is one of the better ones out there right now. Don't get me wrong, what Tesla does and what BYD is doing, great strides. But I think hybrid strikes that nice balance between, what is a full EV and that whole I'm going to run out of charge mentality versus I want to go full bore, gas, give me my super unleaded. Let me see how fast this thing can go. It's going to be right down the middle. And, for me personally, not associating with anything business wise, but I think there's going to be a right down the middle approach. And you can read about it. It's nothing that I'm going to say that's not already out there. Most people, if we're going to go EV, will always have an ICE vehicle in their driveway. It's like a comfort level, right? It's that, what do they call it? Range anxiety in terms of making sure, I can go on a road trip from, Plano, Texas to Gulf Shores, Alabama, of all places. And if I take my ICE vehicle, I got 2 stops. But if I took a full-blown EV, I'm probably talking 4 or 5. So I think it's going to be somewhere in between is my guess.
I just picked up on what ICE meant. Internal combustion engine? Is that okay? Gotcha. Okay, I was like, ICE vehicle. I haven't heard of an ICE vehicle yet, but now.
Well, now I'll throw another one, VIO.
VIO. I don't know.
Vehicle in operation. So you'll hear it like, hey, what's the average age of a VIO, vehicle in operation? It's about 12.5 years, I think is the last metrics I saw on that. So it identifies what the existing car park looks like.
Ah, okay. I see.
And your car park will vary by country too, as you go across, right? So our car park here is going to look a lot different than what's say in France.
Speaking of other initialisms, VIN numbers.
Yes.
You've managed to find time and turn a pet project hopefully into a reality here. And this is a great example to all of our listeners and all the IT leaders listening of those pet projects that you have that you think could work with the organization, but you're too caught up in the weeds, you're too dug down in the trenches. John has a success story here have to do with the data around VIN numbers. VIN is vehicle identification number, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yep, you got it.
Did I get that one correct? Okay. Share a little bit about your VIN number project.
Yeah. So last year we hired a new SVP of marketing and product, right? And he and I got on this data conversation one day and I'm like, oh, great. This is fantastic. Let's go. And I still have the original Visio I shot to him. And it was like, hey, if we take a VIN from our website, here's the possibilities endless. So if you talk about a VIN for a second, to everyone else, it's like, oh, cool. It's like, 18 characters or whatever. But it tells, and if you go back to the people that car chase, like old vehicles and stuff like that, and they're like, hey, that's a blue car, V8 motor. Like it used to tell those stories a lot better probably than what they do today. But VINs have evolved so much. And I think this comes from me being in collision too long and paying way too much as we move from collision to mechanical. They tell a story about what the vehicle is, but if you break it down, you get down into what's called year, make, model, trim, which, Keith, if you see it somewhere, it'll say YMMT. And it took me a bit to figure out, what does all that mean? But as we've evolved the vehicle and we've gone from, hey, here's a Toyota, just regular Toyota truck, now to here's a Toyota Tacoma limited model with the TRD badge. All that stuff now rolls up into a VIN and it tells you, the engine, what trim it had on it, all these different safety components that may be on the vehicle, right? Well, then you take that and you can go to Toyota's website or whoever and you can figure out, hey, this is a 2025 Toyota Tacoma. Here's your maintenance schedule, right? Oh, and by the way, you're at 25,000 miles. You really should have changed your cabin filter, right? So it's telling you all these things. Oh, and by the way, NHTSA says you have a recall. You need to go get that taken care of. So if you take this idea of the VIN, you can figure out how to self-serve to support your vehicle in the long term. But if you're looking at it from a service provider, I'm coming in, I'm going to get my car worked on, whatever the case may be. It's the same thing. Hey, you're at 50,000. It's, when you get your oil changed and the person comes up, hey, it's time for the $60 air filter. You could have already answered that question and stopped off and saved half the money. But I think that power of that VIN and how you can bring it in and help complement, call it add-on feature sets and helping make the consumer make better, decisions about what they do with their car is for the better. And if you look at it in terms of like the fleets and things like that, we're talking money when you're paying attention to your maintenance schedules and not just the one that says on your top left of your windshield, it's time to change your oil. But we still have to grease bearings. We still have to change spark plugs. You still have to change things in an EV. Like the list is limited. It's just sometimes we don't always remember that the owner's manual is sitting on the right side of your glove box and you don't think about it. And wouldn't it be nice if it was just a push notification to your phone that says, hey, your car says it needs to go to Discount Tire because that really not cool thing called TPMS just said you need to go to Discount Tire because you're 5 pounds under pressure. So I think the VIN piece, outside of just what we did internally in talks of how can we take it to help structure into getting deeper into providing mechanical feedback, but taking outside of that and just going to the everyday consumer is could be incredibly powerful.
So John, you had mentioned that your background as being non-traditional in the sense of having a sales background, right? And as I mentioned earlier on when we were discussing this, is IT has normally always been a cost center.
100%.
For most organizations, where they just look at it as you're just a line item that literally just takes away from our net profits. And so can you share an example of something in either your current role or in a previous role where you have been in a position of leadership, made a recommendation for a solution or a product that has positively impacted the rest of the organization from a revenue standpoint and really helped to change the way that IT leaders are viewed in the overall portion of the organization to more of an assistant or support model of generating revenue for a company?
I'll give you a couple. One as of late, look, there's nothing cool, and I tell this internally, there's nothing cool, fancy, or game-changing about EDI, which is the transmission of data from customer into a partner, right? And that is something that drives every facet of our business. And so we kicked off an EDI project probably about February, just kicking the tires around to see what we could do with it. We've now morphed it into something where we update the business on it every week, where we're at, what we're doing with it, how we're going to move from, a manual system to more of an automation system for certain parts of it. How can we board customers faster? Because the faster you can board your customers, the faster they're placing orders, right? So your ROI hits up quicker. And then honestly, it's just providing information and feedback as you go along in terms of, hey, we got to reach out from, 5 customers. Which one of these do you want to prioritize? And it's having that conversation back and forth with your sales and operations leaders. It really helps, one, you as an IT person to better learn the business and what's coming in here's your pipelines and forecasts and see what's coming to help drive revenue in the company. But also you're kind of information sharing with the other side too. We historically kind of get viewed as a black box, right? Partially because we use buzzwords and 3-letter words like, SAN and RAM. But, giving folks a little bit of a non-IT feedback of, hey, we need contact information, we demographics, et cetera. This is why, because it drives into a 4-week timeline on our side. And here's where you slot in. I think giving that feedback without being, we chatted earlier, the perception of just opening a ticket goes a long ways, right? And in a previous life, we were built on inbound volume. So the more vehicles we serviced, the more capacity we had to have on the other side. The challenge is the first 2 or 3 times when people are like, hey, we need you to go increase capacity. And then you show up with a bill of $250,000 and you get the shock and awe. No one talks to you for about a week. That's a thing, by the way. And until you can create that value engine that says, hey, we've done some analysis, and for every 100 vehicles you add, here's what we need to do to keep up with you. And finding ways to kind of, I say insert your way into conversations when we're about to go talk to big customers, and not just going into, we just don't have enough capacity. Right? We can't do that. We as IT folks can't just take that approach anymore. We have to be able to come back with factual numbers that resonate with people. Hey, we've got 1,000 vehicles a month coming inbound. Great. What's the mix of the car park? Is it going to be domestic? Is it going to be European? And then individually, which OEM is it going to be? Because it matters downstream to here. And when people start taking in that volume and really understanding what it means to get to the capacity and the pieces and parts to it, you don't become just a cost center anymore. You become a key to go score the business, because As soon as someone scores that business, regardless, and same with EDI and some of the other things, you become the long pole because we're longer in the supply chain in terms of, I need to go buy capacity. And Michael, you know it's better than me. It could take 30 days. It could take 60 days, depending on what you're sourcing from and where you're sourcing from. If people aren't aware of that before they go start a sales cycle, we become the I hate to say it, roadblock, but we become the person that didn't make the sale, right?
It's all very intricate and interconnected.
But I'll tell you, you've got, from my perspective, and it's been a hard road. I'll speak for myself too. It has not been easy, hence the and here and gray. But you got to be willing to take your lumps sometimes. And, I think I mentioned this to a friend of mine. Sometimes you got to be willing and okay just to figure out that today you're just going to clean the bathroom. And I mean that as a kind of descriptor of, you may just be working on setting up accounts today because that's what needs to be done. And that's okay. You're still adding some type of value, but you've almost still got to earn that keep, right? It's like in sales, you can go out and fish for new customers all day long, but you still got to maintain your internal base at the same time.
Yeah. Words of the wise. John Sotelo, it has been a pleasure having you on the IT Matters podcast. Your last message really stuck out to me. I typically ask kind of a parting statement or a parting message to deliver. Like, imagine you were delivering the keynote at the 2025 Forbes CIO Summit. And one thing that really stuck out is, like you said, some days you just have to clean the bathroom. Simple things.
Yep.
And metaphorically in the CIO's role, I think that's incredibly applicable and a lot of times overlooked with the role.
Some days it's not fun, but you take the days that are not as fun for that day that you get a big win. And remember, the big wins, it takes a lot of small wins to get to a big win. And unfortunately, it doesn't take a whole lot to lose that big win too. So we've got to be mindful as we maintain the easy things, right? And keep the hygiene going.
John, how can our listeners get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active out there. I've kind of avoided most other social media channels at this point. I don't know. I guess that whole concept of getting too old for Facebook is coming along. But I'm always on LinkedIn. Hit me up. I'm glad to communicate. Hit me on Instant Messenger within there. Happy to provide any feedback. Do a quick call, whatever it takes.
Thank you so much. We'll include your LinkedIn profile account in the show notes. And again, thanks for joining the podcast. It's been incredibly insightful. Thank you, Michael, for co-hosting, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening, and we appreciate you tuning into the IT Matters podcast. For support assessing your technology needs, book a call with one of our technology advisors at opkalla.com. That's opkalla.com. If you found this episode helpful, please share the podcast with someone who would get value from it and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Thank you for listening and have a great day.